Welcome to the District 3 debate between Representative Bryson Pittman and former President Jon Uberfeld. Today we are here joined by both candidates who are seeking to represent this district um, in Congress. We'll hear their ideas and what they want to do for the district and why they believe they should be the candidate that receives your vote in this election. Which brings me to my first question. Mr. Pittman, why are you a better candidate for Congress than your opponent, Mr. Uberfeld?
Well, first off, thank you, Robert, and to the moderators, Kenneth and Adam, for hosting
Oh,
this
well,
debate tonight.
Adam is not a moderator, but that's okay.
Oh, well, well, thank you for hosting the debate. I've enjoyed representing the hardworking men and women of District 3 for quite lengthy time. We've got quite a bit done. We've been the most active and effective at doing what we do best, which means legislating and working together with all members of Congress to achieve the things that keep everyone in this district up at night and out of their mind. I feel that I'm best to continue the progress that we've made and drive us towards the future because the future is upon us, my friends, tonight. And I look forward to discussing that and sharing our beliefs and our agenda for the next Congress and to continue the progress because we are far from finished.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pittman. And just a reminder to all candidates, since there are only two candidates participating in this debate, there will not be a structured time frame. I will, as moderator, leave it up to the discretion of the candidates and how long they want to go. And if a candidate's going over what I believe is the adequate allotted time, then I will stop said candidate and we'll move on to the next question. So, Mr. Uberfeld, why would you make a better representative than Mr. Pittman?
Well, thank you for that question. First off, before I answer, thank you, Robert, for hosting. Thank you, Kenneth, for co-hosting. Thank you both for moderating the debate. And thank you, Bryson, for working with me to get this set up. Super hyped about this debate. But let's face the facts for a second. Any candidate can talk about progress. Any candidate can come up with catchy slogans or make nice speeches. That's not what I want to be about. We both have records. We both have plans for the future. But I think that we need to address the serious issues that face our country and not avoid them because they don't look very nice on paper. Here's the facts. 48 million Americans do not have a regular supply of nutrition. Of those 48 million, 16 million are children. That is especially high in rural areas, which includes some of the states in this district, many of the counties in this district. I don't think that we can stand idly by and allow this to continue. We both have proposals, and I'm looking forward to debating them. But here's what my proposals have been shown to do by the data that I am eager to debate. We can reduce the child poverty rate from 21% to 0% with an investment of $91 billion. That is peanuts compared to what we spend on the military. It is peanuts compared to the massive budget surpluses that we have had. We can reduce the overall poverty rate by over 90%. We can create universal childcare. We can create almost 5 million new jobs without taxing a penny of the average American. That is what my plan will do. And I want Bryson to respond to me now. Why is your plans better than this? We both have records. There's no debate that both of us can get the things done that we propose. But my question is, why is your plan better than this one?
All right, thank you, Mr. Uberfeld. So, Mr. Pittman, answer the question. Why is your plan better than what Mr. Uberfeld just laid out? Mr. Pittman?
Sorry, I was on mute. I didn't realize that. Thanks to my good friend Mr. Uberfield for asking that question. Here's my basis for why my plans are better. As long as I've been in Congress for this short amount of time, I've been effective at passing bills to help my constituents here in District 3. And I know that I can finish what we've started because I've done it. I've worked with all my colleagues. They know who I am. They know I'm active and effective at doing what I do. I don't disagree with Mr. Uberfeld's policies. They're good policies. They have good goals. But the question he needs to answer is, can he actively get it done? And can he actively be there when it's time to do action? Because it's all fun and games to talk about what you can do and what you want to do. But are you willing to get down in the dirt, and are you willing to work hard and get it done? I've proven with my 4 bills that I've passed in
Mr.
Congress.
Pittman, with respect, excuse me, Mr. Pittman, with respect, the question was specifically, why is your plan better than the one Mr. Uberfeld laid out?
Well, I'm about to finish. My plans about this issue is simple. When it comes to poverty, the simple fact of the matter is we don't need to give handouts. We need to give people hands up. I believe that we do it by the increased job training, a jobs guarantee through the state and local level. I also believe we expand opportunities to low-income households to those who are in need. It's simple. Poverty is a stricken issue in this district and in this country. And I respect Mr. Uberfeld's many plans, his plans that he has. But I believe that my approach is simpler. It's not going to cost the American taxpayer. It's actually going to be effective for the long term, because this is the future that we're looking towards and we must face it.
Okay. You said.
May I respond?
No.
Let me. Oh, all right, go ahead.
1 second. So you said you didn't want to give handouts to people, but some would consider a federal jobs guarantee a handout. You are handing out somebody and guaranteeing them a job. How is a federal jobs guarantee not a handout, Mr. Pittman?
Yes, well, notice that I didn't say federal. I said jobs guarantee. There's a difference. There is a federal jobs guarantee program that wants the federal government to provide those to provide them with jobs. That's not what I'm proposing. What I'm proposing is entirely different. Although my opponent might support a full-on scale, I support only that way of letting the state and local governments have their way, and also to give jobs to people who actually don't have any at the current time, not just because you want one. Okay, it's about helping those who don't have one.
Okay, thank you.
May I respond?
Of course, Mr. Uberfeld, you have your response.
If you want a local jobs guarantee, then run for local government. You're running for federal office, okay? If you're running for federal office, the legislation that you are proposing will be federal policy. That is a fact. If you want a local jobs guarantee, all power to you. I think that's a noble goal, but go run for governor. Go join one of the governor's legislatures. Sorry. That's number one. Number two, a jobs guarantee, assuming it would be national, which I assume is what you're proposing because you are a federal congressman, would cost more than what I proposed. It would cost $500 billion to ensure a job for everyone who does not right now have one. Number one. Number two, you didn't rebut the actual statistics that I presented, that we would annihilate child poverty, that we would reduce the overall poverty rate by 90%, we create 5 million new jobs. You didn't respond to any of that. You didn't explain why your plans have been proven to be better than that. You proposed new plans, but you didn't say why they were better. As far as getting down in the dirt and doing it, if you don't expect me to accomplish what I'm saying I'll accomplish, look to my record. We both have a record. We both have proof that we can do what we're saying to do. I promised I'd renegotiate NAFTA. I did. I promised I'd cut taxes. I did. I promised I'd balance the budget. I did. I have a long and extensive record that proves my capability to do what I'm saying to do, and I intend to do so again.
Can I get a response, please?
Of course, Mr. Pittman, you have a response.
First off, that's all, with all respect to the former president, that's all nice, what you just said. Your past, you have been a Washington politician in MEC for these past couple of years. That's all fun and games. But it's not about what you've done in your past. And like you said, I am running for Congress. I'm running for federal office, but so are you. You're not entitled to this job. So you can state your past record all you want, but it's not about that. It's about what you're going to do now. And the people around me tell me that even when you were on your job in the past, you were barely active. I've been active. You can ask all around with my colleagues. I've been active every step of the way. I've been effective. I've been aggressive at getting stuff done for this district. I don't play around. I don't sit here and say, well, oh, I can do this and I do that. I actually back it up with what my actions say. I back stuff up. And on your other plans, look, I said your plans are good. I'm not disagreeing with that. My plans are just more simpler than yours. I don't have time to sit here and dilly dally and do this elitist stuff and just say, oh, well, this and that. No, it's not about. It's about being simple, quick, and suffice, and something that's going to actually bring all of us together. Because whether you know it or not, this country is divided. Under President Stevens, this country has been more divided than ever. I'm offering simple solutions that will not take a whole term of Congress to get passed. So
Okay.
that's my take on that.
Thank you, Mr. Pittman.
May I respond?
Of course, he leveled a number of pretty heavy claims against you. So yeah, go ahead, Mr. Uberfeld.
Yeah. So you attacked me for bringing up my record and saying that this isn't about the past. You began your opening statement by bringing up your record. Why can I not bring up my record, but you can advocate about your record? You did so. That was in your first breath of your opening statement. How is that fair? Number one. Number two. You can ask the 80% of MEC who approved of my presidency if I was active. I presented numerous policies that I accomplished. You don't do that by sitting around and doing nothing. Number two. Number three, you said your plans are more simple. Number one, I don't agree that a federal jobs guarantee is more simple. Or I'll clarify, a jobs guarantee in general is more simple than simply a basic income. It is far less bureaucratic, a basic income. It is far easier to administer. The data has shown this over and over and over again. And as I pointed out, a jobs guarantee would cost $500 billion. You didn't respond to how you pay for that. All right. So there's my first point about that. Second point, you didn't actually rebut the policies. I presented policies. You say, oh, they're good policies. You didn't say how they were better specifically. You didn't say that your plan would create more jobs than me. You didn't say that your plan would reduce the poverty rate as much as mine. You didn't provide a single statistic as far as employment or poverty goes. I have, and there's a reason for that. So if you want to attack my activity, you can look to my record. I was elected to a second term by the largest margin at the time. I was the first Republican to ever get reelected as well, and there's a reason for that. I was elected Speaker of the House in my first term in this district. We balanced the budget. We proposed UbiCare, which is the most influential healthcare policy in the history of the country, in MEC at least. So yeah, I'm proud of my record. I will bring it up, regardless of what you say, regardless if you tell me not to. I will bring up my record because I'm proud of it. And I will continue to fight for the plans that I proposed because they have been proven to work. You have not provided a single statistic about how your plan would be more effective. You've just repeated catchy slogans that mean nothing.
Thank you, Mr. Uberfeld. Mr. Pittman, I'll let you respond once and then we'll move on to another question. I'm sure there'll be many more debates for this same conversation happening. So, Mr. Pittman, final response.
Well, my final response is, okay, I don't know what you want. You want a cookie or something for 80% approval rating? First of all, you haven't even been in office. You just recently got back. And then when you got back, you haven't been even campaigning much as I have. You've only propped in for a little while. I've been actually in this district, seeing the people around this district. So that really means nothing on this stage. And second, look, I've already said about your policies that they are good. And as for statistics, what statistics do you want me to state? You already have explained your policy in detail. I've looked at your policy proposal and your platform. Well, it's not really a platform, it's just one piece of paper. But anyway, I've already looked at it and I've saw what you said. I'm just saying, with all due respect, you have to back it up. And I just don't really think I trust you when it comes to being active and effective at getting these things done. Like I said, talk is cheap.
Is that okay? Well, we'll move on. Thank you for that very enthusiastic statement, Mr. Pittman. The next question is, Mr. Uberfeld, you, as you stated, were the founder of UberCare. You wrote the bill. Some would say, after reviewing that healthcare legislation, that it had vague language in it. How and what can you do to actually improve the healthcare in this country? And how can you enroll 40 million, or that number is not correct. How can you enroll the uninsured Americans? Along with that, how will you pay for a plan that you have, the plan that you have?
Well, thank you for the question. I'd like to clarify I'm very proud of the healthcare legislation that we introduced during my presidency. I actually proposed it during my House term, and it was passed during my presidency, but that's besides the point. What that bill did was it reduced healthcare costs substantially. If you want to talk about how vague it is, look at the legislation that was before it. It was a single paragraph on a piece of paper that had a title above it, and that was the bill. It was ridiculous. There's a reason that we passed it bipartisanly and with flying colors, and there's a reason why it's still around to this day. That being said, that doesn't mean we can't improve the system that we already have. One of the things I think we need to improve is we need higher regulation of for-profit hospitals. My bill continued to allow a healthcare free market, and I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I think there's more that we can do. There have been plans proposed in the real life Congress, which would introduce healthcare cooperatives run by the doctors themselves independently that would compete with private insurers. I think that's a great idea. In Germany, healthcare providers are highly regulated. They're regulated nonprofits. I think that's a great idea. I don't think that profit should be a motive in the healthcare industry the same way it is when you're buying a car. You cannot expect to evaluate different competing healthcare plans when you're in a coma or when a loved one is involved and is in serious pain and you need to have care as soon as possible. That isn't something that we should leave up to a free market, at least for the most part. That being said, I think that Senator Sanders' proposal in real life Medicare for all is a good proposal. There are a few changes I'd make. I think it is overall pretty positive, though. That plan is actually cheaper, significantly cheaper than the healthcare plan that we have right now. So I'd be proud to support that. I think it's a great plan with some adjustments to add some more decentralization. An argument that's been made is that, the countries where it works, they're smaller. I think localizing it into groups of states and managing it that way would reduce the bureaucracy. I think it'd make more competition. And I think that'd be a positive change. But I do think we need healthcare reform. Absolutely. I'm not going to sit on
All
my
right,
ass.
thank you, Mr.
and say
Uberfeld.
that.
Thank you, Mr.
Bruh.
Uberfeld. Sorry, I have to cut you off there. Mr. Pittman, question to you. What would you do to fix healthcare in this country? What is your opinion on the Medicare for All bill, as Mr. Uberfeld has said he supports? And what would you do to make sure that the uninsured Americans in this country are insured? And again, how would you pay for that? Quad question.
Well, thanks for that question. And first off, we must come to a realization that although we've improved tremendously under UberCare, there's still a lot of work left to do. I cannot deny that. People still can't get the medicine they need. They still can't get the care that they deserve. Premiums go up and down. It's unpredictable each and every time. I mean, you don't know what you're going to get. So I think what we do is simple. We try to work with the states and the local governments to ensure they have the better care for the people that they serve. It's a shame that we have many who don't understand the significance of plans like Medicare for All, by the way, because you're talking about taking away people's private health care insurance, and then you don't even know what the plan is going to do over these next couple of years, and the cost of it is just tremendous. We're talking about $30-something trillion, or probably even less. I could be wrong. We're talking money that's going to cost the American taxpayer a whole hell of a lot in their pockets. So I think what we do not do is we try the unpredictable and we stick with the predictable. We fix what's wrong by expanding choice, dealing with the local problems that we have existing, like prescription drugs, which, by the way, I'm also proud that I'm a co-sponsor in a prescription drug bill in the House right now. We need to focus on these issues to make sure people get the best of quality care that we can so that it doesn't explode the deficit. Because I know this might sound a little weird for me, but I'm a deficit hawk. I don't believe that we should spend more than we so can bear. We need to do the best, smartest solution for the people right now.
Thank you, Mr. Pittman. Just as a point of fact for the discussion moving forward, keeping the current healthcare system in place would cost the American government, the federal government, around $50 trillion over the next 10 years. So with that, we'll move to Mr. Uberfeld for his response.
Number one, I'd like to ask Mr. Pittman what specifically with UbiCare he disagrees with, because he said a lot of things, but I don't think they had much substance as far as the direct criticism of the actual legislation itself, as opposed to the legislation as a concept. Number one. Number two, I don't think that the proposal that Mr. Pittman put forward is a solution. I think it's an ideology. I think it's a group of vague ideas that don't actually have formulation into an actual plan. We don't know how this would work. Mr. Pittman hasn't cited an actual proposal. He simply said, we will work with the states to make healthcare cheaper. I'd like to ask, how specifically do we work with the states to make healthcare cheaper? I'll leave it at that because I want this part of the debate to go on for a bit longer.
Yes, we'll have the healthcare debate for a long time. This is the number one issue facing Americans. So, Mr. Pittman, answer the question that Mr. Uberfeld pitched to you.
I didn't say anything was necessarily wrong with Uber Care. I just said that it's not perfect, and there's always room for
Hold on,
improvement.
Mr.
We
Pittman.
shouldn't let
Mr. Pittman, you will have another opportunity to make another stump speech, but I just want you to answer the direct question because it was a good question given to you by Mr. Uberfeld. How exactly would you, as a federal representative, work with the states to improve healthcare?
Well, actually, he directed a question at me, so I was just responding to what he said. But if you want to talk about that,
that was his question. That was his question. Just
exactly.
Okay,
but
can I clarify, Robert?
He asked
Robert,
what was wrong with Uber Care. So
I asked number one, what was wrong with Uber Care specifically?
He did ask.
Number two, how would he lower the costs?
So I'm answering that question in that order.
Okay, I did not hear the first part. That is my bad. Mr. Pittman, answer both parts of the question.
Okay, well, to the first question, I don't think we should let our egos get in the way of this disillusionment that everything is perfect, because everything is not. We always have room for improvement because millions in where we're from, in the plains, they have trouble with getting affordable health care. And to the second question, how would I work with the states? Well, first of all, we're going to actually make the states responsible. It's a shame that many of these states refuse to expand Medicare and Medicaid. It's ridiculous. It's a shame. We must do that first and foremost. Second of all, we need to ensure that we have expanded child care coverage. Every child deserves to have affordable health care, just like their parents, and they deserve to be on their plans. And on that note, I think it's also important that we do have expanded choice so we can buy in the market. Many in rural areas in this district don't have the choice and expanded obligation to buy healthcare. And if they do, they are in so small gaps where they have to stick with this plan, even though it's not about worth the damn thing anyway. So I think we build on that by making sure that we have more markets available to people in this country and in this district so that they can have more affordable, good quality health care. That's what I would do. And I would work with my colleagues more further in my second term on that issue. I know many like Speaker Cornowens and Representative Volson. I know that they're interested in this issue, of course, because there is always room for improvement in our healthcare system, and I'm going to try my best to work on that.
Okay, Mr. Uberfeld, you have time for a response.
All right, so you addressed rural areas specifically. We have healthcare choice right now in our current system. What our current politicians have been advocating for the past 20 years is more choice. And rural America right now is facing a healthcare crisis like has not been seen since the 1700s, when people were dying in the streets. when a plague spread. All right, that's how bad this is. We don't need more choice. We don't need to have a profit motive motivating whether people in rural areas get healthcare or not. The fact of the matter is, two big insurance companies, rural America is not profitable compared to urban areas. That's not how we fix the healthcare system, especially for rural voters. Number one. Number two, you mentioned expanding childcare. I actually have a universal childcare plan that is fully paid for, would not tax the average American a dime. It only applies to the top 1% in terms of taxing for revenue, and it provides universal childcare for every family in the United States. All right. Number three, I asked you for specifics on Uber Care. Which part of the legislation, specifically, which line do you disagree with? Which part of that legislation do you think needs to be improved, specifically?
Mr. Pittman?
You can go, Bryson.
Oh, can I respond? Okay, well, I agree with your sympathetic on that issue. Well, look, I understand your passion about this Medicare for all, but you have to understand that this will tarnish our deficit. We'll be paying more back than we already owe. I think it's time to get real here. Let's not keep doing these fantasies about what we possibly can do with this risky system that could possibly tarnish the healthcare and raise taxes on middle class working families in this district. Do you realize the impact that would have on many here? Look, I understand. I understand where you're coming from, but 500 and something $1 billion for Medicare for all. That's just ridiculous. I think it's obvious that we work within the system right now. You can ask the nominee of our party right now, Ethan Fitzgerald. He would agree with me on this as well. You cannot simply just say, well, okay, well, we're just going to try it. And then, well, what if it goes wrong? And I ask you a question since you're in such the mood asking questions night. You want to ask so many questions to me. What are you going to do if Medicare for all doesn't work out? What are you going to do when you see millions of people in this district rallying against you and trying to throw you out of office when their taxes are getting raised through the roof because of this socialist experiment? I think you might want to answer that question before you ask me one.
Okay, Mr. Mr. Uberfeld, if you wish to answer that loaded question, you can, but you're not obligated.
I will, absolutely.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, number one. By all estimates, including conservative studies, Medicare for all would be cheaper than our current system. You can talk about raising taxes. That's only a surface level look. What Medicare for all does is it has a tax on everyone, healthcare. But that percentage that people are going to be paying in income is significantly smaller than what they're paying to private insurance companies. So to argue that this is going to raise taxes is such a surface level, simplistic look at this. It's going to raise taxes significantly less than the cost that people are going to be saving by eliminating these private healthcare costs, co-pays, deductibles, etc., etc., etc. Now that I've answered that part of your your response, let's talk about well, before I go further, I'd like to clarify. You still didn't answer the question that I asked. I don't think you mentioned UberCare once in that response. I may be wrong, but I didn't hear it. I asked you for the line that you disagree with in the piece of legislation. It could provide that. That'd be great, in case you're not hearing me clearly. As far as what I would do if people rallied against me, this isn't a socialistic experiment. This is a system that the rest of the Western world has adopted, and we are the last country to do it. We're the richest country in the history of the world, and we're the only one in the Western world which doesn't guarantee healthcare as a right. This is not a silly experiment. It's not some far out socialist utopian ideal. It is a fact. It's a reality for most of the Western world, most of Asia. We're the only people who haven't adopted it. So if people, were critical of the plan, and it didn't go how it was supposed to, that's not a problem. We're a democracy. We adapt. This isn't. We're not here to make political points or zingers. We'll just change the system. We'll adapt to the data that we have seen, and we'll create something better. But the plan that I'm proposing is based off the data that we have seen right now. The data we have seen that shows that rural Americans are struggling because of a system of healthcare choice. A system that shows that millions and millions of Americans are underinsured, and those who are insured simply cannot afford the prices that they're paying for their care. I'll repeat the statistic that I mentioned earlier. Medicare for all, by all estimates, including estimates by conservative studies, show that Medicare for all would be cheaper than our current system. This would cost less than what you are proposing. We should not pretend otherwise. So you can call yourself a deficit hawk. If you're a deficit hawk, then you should support this because it would reduce healthcare costs and increase quality. So I think that your attempts to make nice, you're an advertiser, I think, is what I'm trying to say. You're not providing actual data. You're not making actual points. You still haven't answered most of my questions. I answered yours. If you could answer mine, that'd be fantastic.
Mr. Pittman.
Okay. First of all, I appreciate my opponent's willingness to want to be a moderator, but too bad he's not. He's a candidate on this stage with me. So welcome back to Earth. Second of all, by the way, I understand that you want to be like the other countries in the world, but former President Uberfeld, I'm sorry to break it to you. We are not like the other countries in the world. We are the United States of America. And I'm proud to be an American, by the way. We don't have the luxury to provide health care for everybody. We don't have the luxury to spend $500 and something billion on this experiment. And whether you like it or not, you can say what you want. You can try to put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. You cannot tell me that the middle class tax rates will not rise. We have to realize that the taxpayer is always right. And I'm telling you now, it's better to be safe than to be risky with this issue, because this is Mr. a hot pad issue.
Mr. Pittman, in the interest of keeping this conversation streamlined and not running in circles, just to be clear, Mr. Uberfeld did point out that the middle class and everyone across the board would pay taxes into the public system to fund Medicare for all, but Mr. Uberfeld points out that the system overall would cost less for the average American when you take out the extra healthcare costs. How would you address that specifically?
Can you repeat the question again, please?
Mr. Uberfeld has pointed out multiple times throughout this debate that the middle class would pay more taxes, but under the Medicare for All plan, through every study that's been passed and through the legislation itself, it eliminates other healthcare costs for that person, making them pay less overall. How would you address
I get the question. Okay, well, first, it shouldn't be a binary choice. You shouldn't have to choose between higher taxes or better healthcare. It shouldn't have to be an if or and decision. You should be able to have low, affordable healthcare with lower taxes. You shouldn't have to be a binary choice. It shouldn't have to be if or and. And second of all, I understand the statistics. Obviously, like I said just a while ago, we need not to fade and tread into dangerous waters. I'm sticking with my plan, and I'm sure by many others in this community, we stick with expanded choice and better opportunity to get choice and affordable healthcare plans. We can always make room for improvement, as I said to UberCare. And he wants to ask me, well, what's your specific? There are a lot of specifics, but you wrote the damn bill, so you should know what's wrong with your own bill. So all I got to say is, look, I'm not going to sit here and continue to go into this back and forth. We cannot afford to raise taxes on the middle class just so that they can have good quality health care. It shouldn't have to come to that. We can do more without raising taxes. And I will not raise taxes. I can make a pledge on this stage tonight. I will not raise taxes if I am elected to a second term on you.
Mr. Pittman.
Okay, can I say
ahead,
something?
Mr. Uberfeld, go ahead, Mr. Uberfeld.
Just one sentence. Cite a study that says Medicare for all will cost the average person more. I have nothing else to say. Just answer that question.
And not more in taxes, Mr. Mr. Pittman. More overall.
Cite a specific study.
A specific study.
A specific study.
I thought last time I heard it was 35 trillion.
Which is less than our current system.
Yeah.
It's 50.
35 trillion.
The current system is $50 trillion over the next 10 years. Medicare for all will cost $30 to $40 trillion over the next 10 years. That is a 20.
And why do we have to raise taxes, Mr. Uberfeld? Why do we have to raise taxes on middle class people? Why?
Because you have to have a way to pay for it. That means of paying for it will bring in less. Hey, you asked me the question. Okay, I'm going to respond now. Okay, it will bring in a smaller percentage of an individual's income than private insurance companies are taking from middle-class Americans right now, which means, yes, you will be paying more taxes, but you will be paying less to private insurers. You'll be paying zero to private insurers, in fact, which means you're going to be paying less. Yes.
No.
Where do you disagree with that?
Look,
hold on, candidates. Mr. Pittman, how would an average person under Medicare for All still be paying money into a private system?
Well, listen. Well, first of all,
no. I don't need you to deflect, Mr. Pittman. Specifically, how? Because you just said this. How would an average person keep paying into the private system under Medicare for All?
Well, don't put words in my mouth. I'm not debating you. I'm debating him. Like I was saying, I know you're supporting him. We know you're supporting him, and you want to help him out as much as possible.
No, Mr. Pittman,
Anyway, I'm trying to finish my point, and if you allow me, I will. Look, all I gotta say is, I'm telling you now, the middle class, the taxes are gonna go up. You can't deflect from that. I know you just admitted it. I'm glad you did. All I'm saying is, we can do something totally different that doesn't require raising taxes on them. And all I gotta say is, on this point, $35 trillion might sound small to you, and I know you're getting all these statistics from socialist-leaning think tanks,
conservative
been dreaming of this.
Think tanks.
Yeah. Well, no. Well, ask the Republican Party and MEC. Do they support that? Will they support that? I don't think so.
You're not a Republican.
Like I said, yeah, I'm not. I'm a caucusing Democrat. But anyway, like I was saying, and I still disagree with this disaster. Anyway, all I know is right now, you can say what you want from left socialist think tanks. It doesn't describe from the fact of what the ordinary man and woman of this district will be facing if they are under your plan. You're talking about raising taxes and exploding the deficit with an addition of taking away private health care insurance. Why do we have to be, and since you're a Democrat, by the way, the Democrats are not a party of taking away stuff, Mr. Uberfeld. They're a party of giving. And I think we should give to them quality, affordable health care, whether you agree with it or not. End of story. I'm moving on.
All right. Well, since he wants to end the discussion, I'll simply end by saying I asked him to cite a study. He couldn't do it. There are conservative studies that you can cite.
What is the conservative?
Mercatus Center. That's one example. Look it up.
Okay. Thank you, candidates, for this very extensive healthcare debate. We will now be moving on to another question. Mr. Pittman, you have a record of fighting. Mr. Pittman, as a Jefferson Attorney General and as U.S. Deputy Attorney General and as a member of Congress, what have you done to continue the fight against corruption, and how will you improve the fight to ensure corruption has no place in America?
Well, thank you so much for this question. And I've been the lead fighter against corruption in Washington and in the United States of America. As a Jefferson Attorney General, we passed the ACLJ, the Anti-Corruption League of Jefferson, which sought to root out the corruption at the roots of the local and state government in Jefferson. I'm glad to say that Governor Brett Patrick, a great friend of mine, has extended funding to this program, and it will continue over this span. And yes, when I first got to Congress, my first accomplishment was the MEC Anti-Corruption Act, which ended campaign favors and bribing by creating a monitoring agency which will investigate the transparency of campaigns of all stripes. It also banned foreign lobbying. And I know I caught a lot of hell from this from senators. A lot of people said, one senator said, you just got to accept, well, he didn't say this, but basically what he was saying is you just got to accept that corruption is here to stay and that we just have to accept it. Well, I'm not accepting it and I never will. And I also, the bill that I passed also made sure that the executive, the president of the United States himself, him or herself, held their cabinet accountable for conflicts of interest and corruptible behavior. I believe that corruption is still existent in Washington, D.C. And whether the politicians won't admit it or not, it will continue if we don't do something about it. And I'm proud of the MEC anti-corruption bill to be my first accomplishment. And in my second term, I'm going to work on a bill with Senator Jamie Riley to laying out specific rules since my first bill didn't pass. But we're going to continue the fight on this issue.
So, Mr. Pittman, before Mr. Uberfeld responds to that same question, I just want to ask you specifically, would you care to name the senator that said that?
The senator who said that, who disagreed, I said he didn't say that specifically, but that's what he basically was saying. I summed it up. I do skim, okay, but I'm not going to disclose his identification because he's a good friend of mine.
Okay.
But I just disagree with him.
Respectable. Thank you. Mr. Uberfeld, what would you do to fight against corruption in the community, and what have you done in the past to fight corruption in the community?
Well, number one, what we need to do is we need to end a reliance of campaigns on lobbyists and big donors. I think an excellent idea to get corruption out of politics. I'll talk about MEC corruption specifically in a second. But as far as national politics goes, an idea to reduce corruption, a great idea would be to actually give every American $500 to donate to a candidate of their choice. I think that's an excellent idea. If we could finance political campaigns based on what the people actually wanted and not on politicians buying campaigns for themselves, I think that would be an excellent thing. I don't think billionaires should be able to have a bigger say in who our nominees are than the actual people themselves. As far as MEC corruption goes, I've been in the moderator team for a long time. We have addressed problems of corruption before. We've addressed problems of voter fraud and rigging elections, and we have dealt with it swiftly. I'm proud of that. And I know that that's not a specific legislation. I'll get to specific legislation in a second, but I am proud of that, and I think it's a shining star on my record. As far as legislation goes, we signed many pieces of legislation during my presidency, which dealt with corruption. We had a nonpartisan committee appoint or draw the districts in Congress. I think that's an excellent idea. We got it passed, and of course, as oh, you gone. And of course, as someone who led a cabinet, one of the largest cabinets in history, mind you, I had to deal with this a lot, and we acted very swiftly on vetting our candidates and making sure that they are optimal for the job and are not going to act in their own self-interest. Honestly, I think that this is a great question to move to after that exchange. I think it's something that regardless of who wins, me and Mr. Pittman could work on in the future. I think it's something that we all agree mutually, with the exception that the representative mentioned, that we could work towards in the future. I think there's a lot of work to be done. I think we all have made tremendous progress in a positive direction. But I think we will continue to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Uberfeld. Mr. Pittman, do you have a response?
No, I would just like to say I agree with friend Mr. Uberfeld wholeheartedly. Corruption exists, and if either one of us wins, whoever wins, I look forward to helping him or him helping me on this issue because it is still existing, and we will fight it.
Okay, thank you. We're going to be moving on to a more contentious issue, I'm sure. Again, Mr. Pittman, you have criticized Mr. Uberfeld about his presidency, his inactivity, and his record. You have also been critical on calling out his record in the DNC and continued to say that you are the best candidate. What makes you the best candidate and representative to represent District 3?
Well, thank you. And look, I've been in politics for a while, for a long time actually, too long. I haven't served in too many offices. I'm not an insider. I'm out of the Washington cloth. I've mostly spent my time in local office, whether it was governor or state attorney general for Jefferson, serving the Jeffersonians as best as I can. I bring to this job what few representatives have. I bring compassion and I bring action. You might not like me, you might disagree with me, or you just might not like my style sometimes. But one thing you cannot disagree with is that when I get into that chamber, I get the people's business done because that's what's important. The people's business. I don't focus on party affiliation. I don't focus on ideology. I focus on getting the work done for my constituents. And I am energetic. I'm enthusiastic about doing what I do. I love what I do, and I'm effective at doing it, and I'm enjoying it. And I have a quick story to tell. Uh, the vice president, Ben McKay, me and him worked together on statehood for the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, and he wanted me to sponsor his bill and propose it in the House because he wanted to. I did it quicker than you could have ever imagined. I did it in like 12 seconds. He was like, wow, that was so fast. Like, you really know your stuff. And I really took that to heart because me and him didn't agree on much. But he really recognized my effectiveness at my job and my freshness when it comes to getting stuff done. And I also want to thank him for his endorsement as well. So yes, the difference between me and the former president is simple. I bring effectiveness, I bring action, and I bring compassion. And I'm going to continue that in my second term.
Thank you, Mr. Pittman. Mr. Uberfeld, same question goes to you. Hold on. I gotta read it out 1 second. Hold on, excuse me. Sorry about this. Same question to you, Mr. Uberfeld. You have been critical of the record of Representative Pittman in the primary and in the general election. What makes you better than the incumbent representative and the best candidate to represent District 3?
Well, I think that you can call someone establishment, you can call someone a Washington insider, but don't let that distract you from the actual record that is being presented. I have an extensive record that I am proud of. We've done multiple key reforms to our political system that many people thought were impossible, many people that were unrealistic, and yet here we are, we've done it. And I'm proud of that. I've been Speaker of the House. I've served 4 terms in the House of Representatives a year ago. It's been some time since I've been in office. I took a hiatus. We were in office for the presidency for 2 terms. I was a senator. We introduced multiple pieces of welfare legislation. We balanced the budget multiple times. That balanced budget that we talk about so much about protecting was first introduced under my presidency. I proposed the budget cuts to get that done, and I'm proud of that. So I think as far as asking who is the best candidate, it isn't a question of left, right. We're both left-leaning at the end of the day. We both have very similar goals. We both want to reduce poverty. We both want to reduce healthcare costs. But there's 2 factors that we need to consider. Number 1, who has the most positive record? I think I do. I think that's an undeniable fact. And number 2, who has the plans that have actually been proven to get it done? I think I've talked a lot about this during the debate. I believe that all of our policies should be backed up with actual data, and I have the data to back up my policies. And that's something that I'm very proud of and will continue to do, even as representative, should I have the honor of being elected, is if I propose something, I want to back it up. And if something is proposed, I want data as to how that's going to work in practice. So I think that I'm not going to tell you, the voter, how to vote, but I do think I would recommend that you consider these things before making that critical decision.
Mr. Pittman, response? Mr. Pittman? Okay, we will move on.
Oh,
Okay, there he is.
I'm back. I'm back.
There he
Sorry.
is.
Look, I stand by what I've said a while back, just a while ago. You can say a lot about me. I might not have as strong as a record as Mr. Uberfield, and he does have a strong record. I give him that. I give him one hell kudos for that. But it's time to pass the torch. We can go on and on forever about what Mr. Uberfeld has done in this community, but we cannot truly phase away from the fact that action calls upon us now. When you get into Congress, you're not going to be able to go on weeks long hiatuses and take breaks because you'll be expelled quickly. It's best that we continue with the active energy and effectiveness in this job. I have shown that, and I will continue to show that. That's why I have endorsements from Republicans and Democrats alike, regardless of party, because they know me, they know my effectiveness, they know what I can do, they know what I'm capable of. I can get it done. I have the leadership, and I will continue that if reelected.
Mr. Uberfeld, I'm sure you have a response.
Of course, you know it. So about passing the torch. When I first became aware of you was in my first term as president of the United States. I was in MEC for 3 to 4 months, if I recall correctly, at that time. So let's not talk about passing the torch. We're part of the same generation here. And let's not pretend like you are not the incumbent. You are representing the establishment Congress in this debate. Let's not, just because the rhetoric sounds good doesn't mean it's actually true. You need to stand up for who you are right now, and who you are is the incumbent. And I'm challenging what the incumbency has provided for us, and rightfully so, I think. You cannot imply that I'm not effective, which you did. You cannot imply that I'm not effective, or that I'm going to go inactive, or that I have gone inactive, while simultaneously saying that I have a massive record, and you said kudos to me for that. So you can't say both. Clearly, I'm effective. Otherwise, I wouldn't have that record to begin with. That's how records come into place. So that's all I have to say on that. If Mr. Pittman would like to respond, I encourage him to do so. But I think the facts are simple here. I have a record. I'm proud of that record. I am effective. Otherwise, I would not have the record that I have. Those are logical deductions from each other.
Yes, I have a response. Well, you're challenging the incumbency, which I don't know why, because this incumbency has passed the MEC Anti-Corruption Act, the Housing Affordability Act, the Financial Institutions Accountability Act, and the Clean Lakes and Ocean Safety Act. So I don't know what's your basis and what's your problem with this incumbency, because this incumbency has done one hell of a job getting stuff done for this district and this country, by the way. But anyway, you're right. When I got here, I remember you very well, and you were, but that doesn't distract from the fact. I know I'm the incumbent right now. I know where I am, and I know who I am, and I know what authority I walk in. But it doesn't stray away from the fact that you've been here for a long time. You've literally done everything that there is to do in MEC, period. You've been the president. You've been a senator. You've done everything that you can accomplish. So the reason why you come back to this Congress, I appreciate the spirit you're bringing to this race and that you want for the job, but you've done everything that there is to do. There's nothing left for you to do, with all due respect. So I'm continuing. I'm going to defend my record, and I'm going to defend my incumbency, because this incumbency is one of results and one of strength. And I'm not going to sit here and let you just say, oh, well, I'm challenging the incumbency. Well, look, you can say what you want, but when they said run, Bryson, run, I answered the call, and I answer today, and I will answer if we're reelected.
Mr. Uberfeld?
I think it is ridiculous to argue, as Mr. Pittman just did, that one can have too much experience. You just presented that I have been in office after office. You have recognized that I have a record much larger than yours, and you're using that as a means of criticism. That is irrational. That is completely irrational. To say that I have done everything there is to do, that means nothing. I haven't done everything there is to do. There's an infinite amount of things to do. So you admitted that there are still problems that we have in our country. Everyone admits this. So long as those problems exist, everyone should have an opportunity to step up and solve those problems, whether they just joined the community or whether they've joined the community, years ago. That's not the point. The point is, do you have solutions that will make a change? I have those solutions. Your bills, representative, they're fine, but they've been proposed a million times. Don't criticize me about doing everything already. I've seen these pieces of legislation before years ago when I was president. I had to sign them. These things have been done before. Providing housing subsidies, that's been done before. Investing in lakes, that's been done a million times. We need new changes. We need someone who has experience at coming up with detailed proposals that will actually change how our country fundamentally works. We don't need slight adjustments of tax rates and, to go off and say, oh, I cut middle class taxes. We need proper tax reform. We don't need investments in childcare of $1 billion or the many things that various representatives have proposed and say, oh, we've made childcare better. No, we need universal childcare. We need radical changes in this country. We don't need politically correct, popular, nice sounding statements that look good, but don't actually work in practice. And if they do work in practice, that don't actually have the effects that they're hyped up to have. I have the plans and I have data that shows that they will work. I have a record of detailed proposals that have made radical changes to how our country works. And I'm prepared to do so again and again. And regardless of how long I've been in the community, I don't think that experience is something that one should be attacked for. I think it is absolutely a good thing. And I stand by that.
Mr. Pittman,
You
response?
you you have the record, you have the proposals, you have the policies, but do you have the time to get it done? And do you have the guts to do what it takes to get it done? I've shown you can say that they've been done a million times. Well, that could be true. But I tell you this one thing, when I focus on specific issues, and as my tenure in Congress, I've enjoyed thoroughly what I've been doing for the people of this district. And yes, you can say that your experience gives you the preparedness for this job, but let's just face the facts. Your experience was the past. You do still have that experience, but it was the past. It's time to think about the now and the present. It's time. Your time is up, and our time is now. This is not former President Uberfeld's mech anymore. This is not your time to try to score more points and get more hurrahs and more approval ratings. This is time to get stuff done. And I've showed that in this job that I have gotten stuff done, and I will do even more with my colleagues, whether they're Democrats or Republicans in the next term. So I'm not running to get pats on the back from somebody. I'm running to actually get things done. It's about effectiveness at the end of the day, something you fail to understand.
Mr. Uberfeld?
Well, I mean, you admitted it yourself. The things that have been done already. You can look I have 2 years worth of Google Docs of bills just like the ones you have proposed. You can talk about progress all you want, but that's just the fact of the matter. I'm not looking for hurrahs. If I wanted hurrahs, I'd propose policies that I know are popular and that I know are mainstream and acceptable. That's not what I'm doing. I'm proposing plans that I think would actually work, that are far out of the political mainstream, but have data to support them. I'm not in this race to be popular. I'm in this race to do what is correct, what is right, because that's what I think matters. There will be numerous politicians who will say what people want to hear. I don't want to be that politician. And that's why I've had so much success, because that's not what I'm about. That's not what I'm about, Representative. That's not what I'm going to be about if I get elected, unlike yourself.
Whoa. Okay, Mr. Pittman, he just leveled a pretty heavy claim against you. How do you respond to that?
Unlike myself, well, listen, I wouldn't expect a creature of Washington to understand what it's like to be a new
You're
representative as you're still from Washington. You're still bred and born from Washington, D.C. You've been a former president and a senator. Now, let me finish my point. It's easy for you as a perfect, fancy Washington, D.C. politician who's been in MEC for a long time, as I said before, to sit here and try to pick and do cherry picking on my record and what I've done. I take damn proud well of what I've done for this district, and I don't need lecture from you or anybody else. The fact of the matter is, I've brought something that you haven't brought before. I've brought effectiveness and I've brought nuance to our political system. You've been around forever. It's time to give it up. It's time to encourage more leaders, political leaders like me, to rise up in this community and actually make it worth something. And I'm doing that in Congress every single day that I go in that chamber and I vote and I legislate. And I'm not going to give up on that ever. I'm never going to give up on this job. You've given up on your past jobs and you could bounce to others back and back like a traditional opportunist, but I'm actually running to continue what I've done. So, with all due respect, you can throw around little cute, fancy phrases like that, but it doesn't distort from the fact that you've been around longer than I have. And it's time to move on. You are the past, former President Uberfeld, and I am the future. We are the future. The people of this district are the future. It's just not about you. It's just not about you. So I'm done with that conversation. It's over. I've said what I've had to say.
Well,
Okay.
can I
Yeah,
can
of
I
course,
comment one last
Mr.
time?
Uberfeld. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll simply repeat what I've said before. You've been in MEC 3 months longer than me. Okay.
I've been more
You're not
active
some
than
new
you as well,
hero.
too. I've been more active as you. Count that.
Please let him finish, Mr. Pittman.
You became active the last few months. Okay, I've been president for 2 terms. I've been speaker of the House for 2 terms. I've been representative for 4. Okay, I'm not going to accept criticisms of my activity when I have a clear record that shows the exact opposite. All right, number 1. Number 2, I am not going to accept criticism of experience. That is silly. You say we shouldn't look to the past. You've been pointing to your past record this entire time. That's our job. You're running for an election. Your job is to point to your record and show what you have done. And my job is the exact same thing, and so I'm going to do it. So to say that, to take pride in the fact that you have a record is great. What isn't great is to take pride in the fact that you have a smaller, less extensive record than mine, that you have a less advanced record than mine, that you have policies that have been proposed before. The future is not proposing old policies. The future is proposing new ones, which is what I've done, that have proven results, that are data backed, to transform how this country is going to work. That's the future. The future is not doing what we've already done.
You can't
that's
talk
all I
about
have
the
to
future
say.
when you're the past. That's
I am
all I got to
talking about
say.
the
Okay,
future
okay.
right
Thank you,
now.
thank you,
You're the past.
thank you, candidates. Thank you, candidates. Okay. Mr. Uberfeld, the divisions between the executive branch and the legislative branch have grown extensively over this past presidency. Uh, that is in part because of the speaker and also in part because of the president. How would you, as representative, ease these tensions, and what would you see as the main cause for these tensions? That question comes from Mr. Quinones. Go ahead.
Well, there have been a lot of hypotheses about why this division is. One of the popular ones is that Chase Stevens is a conservative working with a radically liberal Congress, radically from the perspective of the president, at least. Well, I have news for the people who think that I was a Republican president for 2 terms. I had a Democratic Congress for most of those 2 terms. And we worked absolutely fine. We got a lot done. We got health care reform done. We balanced the budget. We got welfare reform done. That's not to say that President Stevens isn't partly to blame. I don't approve of his conduct at all. I think he's acted radically immature in this office, but that doesn't mean that we can't at least try to mend this divide that we have. And I think that I have more experience than anyone else in this community at doing that because of the position that I have been in. So I think that we shouldn't give up on uniting as a country. We shouldn't give up on the idea that regardless of whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, that you can't work together. I think we've seen a lot of new Republicans rise up these past few months. And I think that's a great thing. We need an alternative dialogue. We need to have discussions about policy that maybe we haven't considered before. I think that's a great thing. We need to be mature about it. We need to be bold about it. We need to be humble about it. we need to approach people who have political disagreements with us as equals, not as adversaries, because ultimately we both have the same goal, even though we disagree on the means of getting there. And I think that key agreement and recognizing that we have the same goals can help us to actually discuss the actual means of getting there in a mature way that I think will bring results, and that has brought results in my experience.
Thank you, Mr. Uberfeld. Same question to you, Mr. Pittman. You've mentioned that Congress and the White House has been more divisive under President Stevens than any other president. Who do you blame for this, President Stevens or Speaker Quinones? And do you approve of the way both of them have managed this situation?
Well, look, there's plenty cases to say that there's blame to go on both sides, but I have to say the president certainly hasn't helped with trying to go around Congress every single time. He's done executive order at the executive order, and if we didn't have an inquiry, I probably, as chairman of the oversight committee, I probably would have launched an investigation into this great abuse of the executive power through the orders, because it's been very, very, very out of control. But look, I think the speaker and the president both haven't been as more adult-like as they've been. But look, we cannot give up on ourselves. There's something in this political system that we both sides have forgotten about, and that's something called grace. Grace and mercy and working together. We can mend fences together once again. I do not agree with everything that President Stevens tries to go through, and I don't agree with the way he does it. But it's important for us, and I've still kept hope as a congressman. I've kept hope that we could possibly work with this president, because I want every president, whether they're Democrat, Republican, or Independent, to be successful. Because when they're successful, we are successful. But back to your point, we have to get back to the basics of talking together instead of getting into childish antics and going back and forth. And certainly by not sitting here calling for investigations into people or the speaker, we have to get back to the basics. And after this whole misconduct and this impeachment investigation, some people have been curious about what my position would have been. Since we were in a presidential election anyway, I would have likely voted to censure the president instead of impeachment, because this country is already divided enough. We cannot risk going through more divisive times through impeachment. And his judgment would have been, if he would have ran for election, he would have likely not made it, because the voters would have judged him on his conduct and his presidency, which has not been appropriate. So I think we get back to the basics by working together and finding common ground. And it's a shame we didn't achieve this under the Stevens presidency, but hopefully in the next presidency we can, whoever it may be.
Thank you, Mr. Pittman. Mr. Uberfeld, do you have a response?
Well, it's not much of a response, more of a statement. I just want to say that I think regardless of where we disagree, we should all be very happy that we have an upcoming presidential election where both of the candidates, I think, have the potential to be very uniting candidates, should they choose to be. I think that we should be very proud of where our country is headed, and I think we should keep up that direction, not go back to where we have been the past few weeks. Hi, Adam.
Okay. Thank you both.
Are we still?
Mr. Evans, please. Please. Mr. Evans, mute your mic, please. We are in the middle of a serious debate, discussion on the issues, and we do not need your shenanigans being hooliganed in this call.
I did not know it was live.
Mr. Evans, please. Oh, my lord. Mr. Uberfeld, what can you do to help improve rural families, and why is your plan better than the plan offered by Representative Pittman?
Well, if you look in rural areas and you look at the data, you see one of the reasons for one of my key policies, and that's universal childcare. In many rural areas, childcare is there's either one provider who hikes prices because they have monopoly power over that area, or there simply isn't any care at all. If you look at rural areas, they're the most impoverished in the country right now. And I don't think that we can tolerate that for any longer. So that's why I do have my plan for universal childcare and my plan to provide $3,000 to $300,600 to every low income family who has a child. So $3,000 per child. I think that's a great idea. It's been shown that it will reduce the child poverty rate to close to 0%, and then combined with our basic income policy would lower that number to non-existence. There simply wouldn't be child poverty anymore should we go forward with these radical proposals. I think that we should assist rural areas financially, but we should also do so in a smart way. I think we should invest into infrastructure more than we have before, using smart means of funding. I think that we should invest in the actual businesses that will benefit from these infrastructure improvements so that we can make back some of the investment that we've made. I think that we should create new highway systems that ease means of transportation of goods between rural areas and more wealthy areas. One of the biggest wealth creators in history is transportation. It is the ease of getting from one place to another. So I think we should invest very, very, very heavily in that. And of course, as I've said before, healthcare reform will also help. Rural areas have some of the worst healthcare in the country. Many of them can't acquire healthcare. Obamacare was one of the biggest benefactors, or one of the biggest benefactors of Obamacare was rural areas. And that's because increasing direct benefit from the government to these areas helps. It's just a fact. Leaving this up to free market forces hasn't worked. Although we should encourage small businesses to be the backbone of these areas, to make it easier to start a small business in these areas. A basic income would increase entrepreneurship, and that's one of the reasons why I proposed it. So there's lots of things that we can do, but those are some of the key things that I would do.
Thank you, Mr. Uberfeld. Same question to you, Mr. Pittman. What would you do to help rural families in District 3 and across this country? And why is your plan that you brought up better than what Mr. Uberfeld just articulated?
Well, first of all, I'm glad that we have focus on rural America because it's not been easy for people in rural areas by no means, and it's important that we focus on that. Have a laser focus on that. First thing we need to do is simple. We need to actually expand opportunity. Now, what does that mean, you ask? It means more education opportunities. It also means expanding choice between in the education system, giving low income kids who have gifted abilities and the God given potential to go to advanced schools, because we need them to put their learning energy into gifted schools, because it's important that we do that. The success of the future begins with education, and that's what we also start. Second, we need to also continue to build on our infrastructure, our rural infrastructure. We have a bill right now in the House that just passed, I think. Yeah, it did, and hopefully it'll be introduced in the Senate, which will also invest in rural communities, urban and rural, or invest money into rural communities to build up our roads, our bridges, our airports, because that is the key to rebuilding and reinvigorating rural America. We also need to ensure that they have the job as we see it. And going back to my state and local jobs guarantee, we can put people to work. If you are less fortunate and you don't have the tools to succeed, you might have went to high school, but you didn't go to college and you're still out of work, you're struggling. We should be able to offer jobs to you, not big jobs, but jobs that can help you get by with good pay and fair benefits so that you can provide for your family or yourself. I think that is the fundamental thing that we need to focus on. We also should focus on making sure that our officials are accountable to rural America, because some like to forget about them as if they were yesterday's news, and they like to focus on urban, but they forget that America was built off of rural areas. We are a rural country, and we need to focus on them because they don't they might not be in the political system every day, but it's important that we focus on them. So we need to also make sure that we focus on these issues because they're at the heart and the soul of this nation. So if reelected and given a second term, I will focus on them.
Thank you, Mr. Pittman. Mr. Uberfeld, would you care for a response?
I'll respond briefly. I think that a lot of the proposals that we've mentioned here have already been discussed, so I don't want to go into it too intensely. But I will mention a few things. I think that we can increase money into rural areas more heavily if we do so using smart revenue and spending mechanisms. A jobs guarantee would cost $500 billion, according to studies. I think that if we have a plan that is just as effective, which I believe my plan is based on the data, that is cheaper than that, that leaves more money to invest in infrastructure, that leaves more money to invest in healthcare, that leaves more money to invest in education. I think simply saying we're going to invest in these things, like, great, but we need actual specifics as to how we're going to do this, and we need a smart policy. We need to do this in a way that hasn't been done a million times. We need to do this in a way that works, that's been demonstrated to work by the data. I think that we can have, like, on education, for example, let's invest in education. Good, but how are we going to do it? There have been many proposals on how to make education more efficient, how to improve teacher-to-student dialogue that we should seriously consider. We shouldn't throw money at the problem. It's more detailed than that. Progressive policy is and always has been more detailed than that. So I think the fundamental disagreement here is not based on our ultimate goals, it's based on how we're going to get there. And I think that we should take an approach that's driven by data, that's driven by studies that have serious credentials, and I think that we should do so in a way that is smart. And that's what I'm running on, is data. I'm running on facts and figures, not what simply sounds good but doesn't actually work in practice.
Mr. Pittman, would you care for a response?
Well, I'm going back to this question. My jobs guarantee program is not like the us a radical program that is totally by the federal. No, that's not what it is. It actually gives the states the option to help those without work to find work. This is not some massive government program that's going to give everybody good jobs and just raise their pay significantly. No, that creates an unfair playing field, and it wouldn't be fair to people who work so hard in the first place to make the money and earn the wealth that they have. No, this actually lifts people up out of poverty. As an African American, people in my community struggle every day with poverty and the good paying jobs because they either have a criminal record, they have a couple backgrounds that they're not proud of. They're unable to find work in the community and contribute so that they can actually make a living. This would actually make us focus on that and help people lift them out of poverty and lift them into the future with jobs. These jobs are not meant to be long term. They're a start on the right path. And I believe in this program, and in my second term, I can tell you that will be one of my top priorities is to focus on this issue.
May I respond?
Of course, Mr. Uberfeld, and then we're going to be moving on to the final question and then closing statements after that.
All right. Well, I think that we agree. We do need to solve the problem of poverty. We do need to create good, well-paying jobs. The question is, how do we do that? We don't do that by giving states the option to have a jobs guarantee. When you're talking about rural states, whenever the government offers a plan that states can opt into, rural states have a record of not doing that because they have smaller budgets. They simply can't afford that. Take New Mexico, for example. New Mexico is struggling with poverty. It has one of the smallest budgets in the country. It has a lot of budgetary problems. How are you going to ask them to create a jobs guarantee without federal involvement? You can't give states the option. States already have the option to do that. They can pass these plans whenever they want to. But when you're in federal office, you're expected to propose federal plans. I think that if you want to have a jobs guarantee that's local, run for governor. I would
I've already been governor, but okay.
But you didn't implement that plan as governor. So
Well, we had a
that's
lot to do.
Excuse me. I'm talking.
We had a lot to do.
I'm talking. So
I hear that.
So instead of a jobs guarantee that states can opt into, which I don't think is a good idea, let's look at the data. A universal basic income would create 4.7 million new jobs. That policy alone. It would decrease poverty by more than 10 points. My plans together, which include the universal basic income, universal child care, as well as a child allowance, would decrease the poverty level to 1%. I have the data to prove that. You can go to my MeWe account. All the data is listed there. So it sounds good. Let's have a federal jobs guarantee that isn't a massive system. It's going to be for the states. Okay, that's cool. But is there any data to back that up? No, there's no data to back that up. There's no proposal for that. There's no actual concrete proposal for that. There's no study you'll find that will say that an opt-in jobs guarantee works. There are studies that say that a universal basic income would create millions of jobs, would create $2.5 trillion added to the economy. So let's be practical here. Let's bring down the poverty level to 1%. Let's eliminate child poverty. Let's create millions of jobs. But let's do so in a smart way that's been proven to work, not with all talk and no action.
Thank you, Mr. Uberfeld. Before we move on to the next question, I'm sure, Mr. Pittman, you have a response?
Well, it's action. And you can say what you want, but we are going to make sure that people get jobs. And there's no doubt about it. So I don't have the necessity to sit here and continue. I'm moving on.
I do want one specific question to be asked. So Mr. Uberfeld had brought up how you had served as governor, or you had said, and you are advocating for a local jobs guarantee. Why didn't you implement that policy as governor?
Well, because we had to draft a constitution, budget. We had so much on our plate that wasn't done. So we had to get it done quick. That's why.
Okay. Well, staying on the issue of poverty, what this comes from the audience. Mr. John Lampros has asked this question. What are your thoughts on the universal basic income program? And if you agree with it, what will or excuse me, sorry, it's a little word weird. I'm going to restart. What is your thoughts on the UBI? And if you agree with it, will you try to get it done? That question can go to Mr. Uberfeld first.
Yes, I do agree with that program. I think that in an age of automation where 4 million manufacturing jobs have been automated away, we need an option for people to bring in income where jobs are rapidly disappearing. It just makes sense. We're the wealthiest nation in the history of the world. I presented a plan on how we can pay for $1,000 a month for every American, no new taxes on the bottom 99.8%, no added deficit or debt, which I know Mr. Pittman will appreciate as a self-declared deficit hawk. So yeah, I absolutely do agree with this. What the studies have shown is that a universal basic income would increase entrepreneurship. It would increase the amount of people who are starting a small business. It would increase bargaining power for workers, which is what we desperately need right now in an age where the 1% is becoming increasingly powerful. It would create, as I've mentioned, nearly 5 million new jobs, add $2.5 trillion to the economy in a span of only 5 years. So yes, I absolutely support a universal basic income, and I will try to implement it if I'm elected representative.
Thank you, Mr. Uberfeld. Mr. Pittman, same question to you. Do you agree with the UBI program, and would you try to get it done if elected?
It's a noble goal, but we have bigger issues that face our country right now.
Bigger issues than poverty?
And poverty is a big issue, but I'm not sure that the UBI is the correct policy solution for this moment in time. But I want to do more research on this, and then we shall see and go from there. But until then, I'm going to have to look into it.
So, just to be clear, that's a no on the UBI from you.
As of now, yes.
Okay. With that, candidates, we have past an hour and 25 minutes. Thank you both for participating in this debate, and we will now be allotting time for closing statements. Again, there is no time constriction on this closing statement, so it'll go as long as you choose. Mr. Pittman, we'll start with you.
Well, thank you. And look, we are at a crossroads in our country. We've done so much in Congress, passing the Anti-Corruption Act, Housing Affordability Act, until the Financial Institutions Accountability. We've done so much. And I'm far from finished because there is so much unfinished business. Please, I'm asking you if you're watching tonight to vote for me because we must move into the future, not continue back to the past. I am running for re-election to continue the people's business, the people's business. We the people. The Constitution said we the people, not we the Democrats, the Republicans, we the people. And I'm running for that basic reason. So I'm asking for your vote and your trust for re-election. Thank you all, and God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
Thank you, Mr. Pittman. Mr. Uberfeld, you have time for a closing statement. Go ahead.
All right. Well, the foundation of our country is the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I think when you look at the data, that just is not possible in our current state. When people are spending 91% of their income to pay for childcare, when 48 million people can't reliably say that they have a daily meal on their plate, 16 million of which are children. When tens of millions of Americans are uninsured, when jobs are getting automated away at the fastest rate in our history, 1/3 of jobs are going to be automated away in this coming century. We need to change our course. And I think the way we do that should be sensible, it should be rational, and it should have data to back it up. I presented a number of proposals over my tenure as president, as representative, as Speaker of the House, as senator. But here's what I'm proposing right now. I'm proposing that in the United States of America, the richest nation in the history of the world ever, we should not have one of the highest child poverty rates in the Western world. We shouldn't have tens of millions of people uninsured. We shouldn't have a 22% poverty rate. There are ways to solve this. We've presented ways to solve this that are sensible, that are accomplishable, that don't need new taxes, that don't need complicated bureaucratic schemes in order to work. We can abolish poverty for the world of our children. We can create a country where people don't have to be scared about the costs of childcare. We can create a country where people don't have to worry about whether they're going to be able to afford treatment if they have cancer or another.
Mr.
Hi. Anyways.
Okay. Just making sure.
We don't have to live in a country where people live paycheck to paycheck, where people are unable to say that if they had an unexpected $500 bill, they wouldn't be able to afford it. Let's create a country of the future. Let the United States not just catch up to the level of other countries. Let's be a shining example for them to follow as a country that is devoted to freedom, not just personal freedom, but economic freedom, freedom to start a business, to start a family without fear of economic penalties. That is what I stand on. That is my policy for this race. And I urge you to consider supporting me, consider supporting Bryson as well. Look at all of our views, make an educated decision. I hope I have your vote in this coming election. Thank you very much. God bless you. I hope you all have a great night.
Thank you, Mr. Uberfeld. With that, candidates, we have concluded the first and only debate for District 3 House election. Um, Now, people of District 3, it's up to you. You make the decision. You heard the candidates give their pitches. You heard them, exchange a lot of words, I'm sure. Uh, Now, again, it's up to you. Make the right decision, District 3.